this video, we go to discuss about the basic properties of charges. The basic properties of charge. So, we have, that means the charge have the three fundamental properties. Charge have three fundamental properties. The first one is the electric property. The second one is the conservation property. The third one is the quantization property. Third one is the quantization property. So first of all, we have to discuss about the electric property of charges. Electric property of charges. So the first one is the electric charge. Electric charge. So we know all the materials are made up of atom in the universe. All the materials are made up of atoms in the universe. Okay. So in the atoms, inside the atoms, we have three particles. Inside the atoms, we have three particles. One is the proton, another one is the electron, another one is the neutron, another one is the neutron. So these particles having a mass, these properties having a mass, and also it have some basic properties, basic characteristics or basic properties. So we say that kind of properties as a inherent property. So naturally it have some mass. So proton have some mass, electron have some mass, neutron have some mass. Okay, இது எல்லாத்துக்குமே mass இருக்கு, and also it have some basic properties. So one of the basic property is electric charge. One of the basic properties is the electric charge. So each particle, that means the proton and electron, not neutron, proton and electron having the positive and negative charges. So this property is the electric charge. So this electric charge is also a basic and fundamental property of these particles. So we said that basic property, we said that word is the intrinsic property. And the most of the then the scientists did some experiment, and afterwards they have to give the unit of this electric charge is that means SI unit of charge is a coulomb. SI unit of charge is coulomb, and we denoted as a letter is a capital C. Okay, so this property is the electric charge. That means electric property of the charge. Okay. The second property is the conservation property. Conservation of charges. So before rubbing the materials, the atom is the neutral one. That means the material is the neutral one. So after rubbing, before rubbing, all the materials are a neutral one. After rubbing, due to friction, the charges gets transferred to one material, from one material to another material, Okay. So this property is the conservation property. So before rubbing, it have a neutral one. That means it have positive, negative and neutron. So every atom have a proton, electron and neutron. Okay. So they said, so the total, that means the amount of proton and the amount of electron is same. Then we said the atom is electrically neutral. So ரெண்டோட புரோட்டானோட அமௌண்ட்டும் எலக்ட்ரானோட அமௌண்ட்டும் வேறையா இருந்தது அப்படின்னா, அப்போ ஆட்டம் வந்து ஒன்று பாசிட்டிவ் ஜாஸ்தியாக இருந்தது அப்படின்னா, அப்போ ஆட்டம் வந்து என்னவா இருக்கும், பாசிட்டிவ்லி சார்ஜ்டு பார்ட்டிகிளாக இருக்கும். நெகட்டிவ் சார்ஜஸ் அதிகமாக இருந்தது அப்படின்னா நெகட்டிவ்லி சார்ஜ்டு பார்ட்டிகுலர். இப்போ ஆட்டம் வந்து எலக்ட்ரிக்கலி நியூட்ரல்னு சொல்லிட்டாங்க. ஸோ த அமௌண்ட் ஆஃப் பாசிட்டிவ் அண்ட் த அமௌண்ட் ஆஃப் நெகட்டிவ் இஸ் ஈக்குவல், போத் ஆர் ஈக்குவல். அப்போ தான் நமக்கு எப்படி இருக்க முடியும், ஆட்டம் எலக்ட்ரிக்கலி நியூட்ரல் பார்ட்டிகலாக இருக்க முடியும். சரியா? ஸோ போத் ஆர் ஈக்குவல். ஸோ வென் த ஆப்ஜெக்ட் ரப்டு, ஸோ அப்போ தான் நமக்கு என்ன பண்ணுது, சார்ஜஸ் கெட்ஸ் transfer. So this property is a conservation property. That means charges neither created nor destroyed, but one kind of charge is transferred from one object to another. That means the charges transferred one object to another object. Charges transferred one object to another object. So this property is a conservation of charges. And the total charge, if I considered, I have 8 positive charges, 8 negative charges, 8 positive charges, 8 negative charges. So the total charges present inside the atom is 16 charges, 16. So the total change in charge, consider panna appadina plus 8 and minus 8. So the total change in charge is 0. Total change in charge is 0. So we have 8 electrons, 8 protons. சரியா? But change in charges, ரெண்டுக்கும் இடையில இருக்கிற difference பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா it gets to 0. So in the universe, the total change in charge is equal to 0. Is equal to 0. அதை வந்து net change in charge சொல்லுவோம். சரியா? So this property is the conservation of charges. And we have another one property, that is quantization. That is quantization of charges. Quantization of charges. So the word quantization means the small amount. The small amount. So what we find out here, the small amount of charge. Small amount of charge. So the small amount of charge and the property na is one of the property of charges. One of the property of charges. Then what is the small amount of charge அப்படினா, we have to find out that we have to, one famous scientist, சரியா, Robert Millikan, he found that they experiment and he gave the value of the small amount of charge. Okay ma? So the fundamental unit of charge, so every charge have some fundamental unit. Every charge have some fundamental unit. அதோட வேல்யூவை கொடுத்தவர் யாரு? ராபர்ட் மில்லிகன். So we give the letter to mention the fundamental unit. Fundamental unit of charge is E. Unit of charge is E, and the value of this is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. Then now we describe the quantization of charge. So I take one charge Q. So especially we have to mention the charge. We have to use this letter Q to mention the charges. சரியா? So charge mention பண்றதுக்கு யூஸ் பண்ற letter Q, and the fundamental unit of charge represent பண்ற letterக்கு பேரு E. Okay? So I have to define the quantization of charge. அதாவது இந்த சார்ஜோட quantization எப்படி டிஃபைன் பண்றது அப்படின்னா, so this charge is equals to the integral multiple. அதாவது இந்த சார்ஜஸ் எத்தனை அளவுல இருக்கு, so integral multiple and the fundamental unit of charge and the fundamental unit of this charge. So இந்த சார்ஜோட integral multiple, இந்த சார்ஜோட fundamental unit. இந்த சார்ஜோட integral multiple, இந்த சார்ஜோட fundamental unit. இது ரெண்டோட ப்ராடக்ட் தான் the quantization of charge. இது ரெண்டோட ப்ராடக்ட் தான் quantization of charge. அதாவது இன்டெக்ரல் மல்டிபிள்னா இது ஒரு சார்ஜ் இருக்கா, ரெண்டு சார்ஜ் இருக்கா, மூணு சார்ஜ் இருக்கான்னு சொல்றது. சரியா? இது ஃபண்டமெண்டல் யூனிட் ஆஃப் இந்த சார்ஜோட ஃபண்டமெண்டல் யூனிட். ஓகேவா? So now we said this is the quantization of charge. This is the quantization of charge. Okay. So if you have any doubt, please comment on the comment section, and thank you so much. We will meet you on next video. Thank you.